Yeah.
Sync clap.
Sync clap. They say if you want to be remembered, you need to be the first or the last. Well, we're not the first to have the GH5, but well, maybe we're not the last, I don't know. But we've been waiting a while to get this in our hands, and that's actually a great thing. And it's a great thing because a lot of people in the last 3 to 4 months have gotten a chance to try this thing out, and a lot of blogs and a lot of vloggers have come back with a lot of really different information about their experience. This is exciting because it is called the most exciting product of 2017 in the camera world.
Absolutely.
Do you think it lives up to the hype?
You know what? I really do. And this has really been a fantastic guerrilla filmmaker's camera for years and years. You know, some of the first editions of these we used to hack into and expand the bit rate dramatically. And so I'm really excited to see what this can do. I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, but I know at 4K, it only has a bit transfer rate of 150 megabits per second. Yeah. And there's already some talk about 2 firmware updates coming out. So would you like to talk about those firmware updates and what they offer?
Yeah, so here's the bit of the controversy that wasn't talked about early on, but is now a bit of a big deal, which they said, okay, it's great that you got 10-bit 422 internal.
It's fantastic.
Except for the fact that you're driving that really robust codec through a tiny little straw.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, you're not actually getting the full benefits of 10-bit 422. And if you actually do the math, you realize quite quickly that you actually have an image that's no better than an 8-bit. So Panasonic knows this, and as a result, they are coming out with a firmware upgrade this summer that will give users 400 megabits per second transfer rate versus the current 150 megabits. You are going to see a definite change in the quality of the footage from there. It's still technically not enough, but I think that's about as much as Panasonic is willing to let consumers have before it starts to eat into their professional video line. Right. I think they're just throttling it probably. It may also have to do with some internal stuff within the camera, but I think they're just throttling it for that reason. But you'll be able to start to see the difference. So all the tests you see right now is comparing Vlog with this 10-bit 422 versus the GH4, which you're not going to see any difference. And in our tests showing the Vlog at 10-bit 422 and 4K, you still suffered from the exact same thing that the GH4 suffered from, which was huge amounts of magenta and cyan microblocking and banding. And we see it in a bunch of different footage that we took. And so hopefully this is something that is repaired come the new firmware upgrade. And one of the things that we talked about before we were shooting this is how a lot of companies now, it's a scramble to the finish line to try to get their camera out. And what I find that a lot of companies are doing is really releasing their product before they've really dialed in the firmware, because they want that product in consumers' hands with this sort of promise that they're going to say to the consumer, don't worry, we're going to get this sorted in the next couple of months, bear with us. And it seems to be like every camera manufacturer is kind of doing that. So a lot of the issues that people are having with this camera seem to be likely due to just some early firmware that still needs to get sorted. Speaking of early firmware, there is a difference right now in terms of how the files are handled on my computer. I have a 15-inch MacBook Pro. I can play 4K files with very little problem without totally the need to proxy with the GH4. But GH5, just like no bueno. No, it does not like it at all.
So transcoding. So it's adding another step, another layer to your work process, adding time. If you need to get something out quick, making ProRes files, it's really going to chew up a bit of, maybe a night of rendering or processing, right?
Totally. The files wouldn't even show up in DaVinci Resolve. Like they would show up, but they would just be like the Matrix. It was just nothing. And then same with the RAW files. The old Panasonic RAW files from the GH4, I could just hit the space bar in the folder structure of my computer and it'll pop up.
It'll pop up.
But not so much. Lightroom does read them though, which is great. So that's really all that you need. So the other things that people aren't talking about so much, but I think is a super huge deal with this camera, and I say this from a place of honesty because I own a GH4 and I've been shooting with the GH4 pretty much since it came out. And I love the camera. It's an incredible camera. But we're not shooting with my GH4. mostly because it's in the shop right now. And it's the third time it's been in the shop. The first 2 times it's been in the shop is because I broke the micro HDMI port. So there's this tiny little HDMI port that if you want to hook up external monitors, and I have even an HDMI pincher, and it still just toasted it.
Yeah.
Which is funny that they did a micro HDMI, because in previous models they actually had a full HDMI. And they went to micro. Well, good news, folks.
We're back to full HDMI.
We're back to full HDMI. So that's a big deal, and I don't find a lot of other videos or bloggers are talking about this.
Yeah.
The second thing that is a really big deal, especially now that people are shooting in log a lot more, but even if you're not going to shoot in log, is the Waveform Monitor. So really, when you're looking at a camera like this is a video camera in a DSLR form factor, effectively. And waveform monitors and vector scopes now bring it into the world of a proper video camera in terms of exposure tools. And so it's really exciting to see that they have that now. I don't know anybody else who actually has a waveform monitor. You can do a hack with the Canon ones,
Yes,
with the Magic Lantern. Because it's a hack, the user interface is so terrible on it, and the waveform monitor is kind of so terrible that I just didn't even want to use it. I'm like, this is horrible. Where this is, really graphically nice. It almost looks a bit like the C300 and C100 waveform monitor. So you can get proper gray card exposure to spec. And so that's what we did too, is that we did a vlog test and we were able to use the waveform monitor to both expose our vlog at manufacturer recommendation, but also expose our vlog above.
Super handy.
And so that should lead us into talking about vlog just a little bit more, because what people I think need to understand is vlog requires a little bit of overexposure, because so much of that information is in the highlights. And so if you actually expose for what the manufacturer recommends, pretty much with any camera that shoots log, you're going to see a bunch of noise in the shadows, and that's not going to, you're not going to be able to take that out unless you crush down the shadows. And so you'll be able to see that in some of our footage, side by side, where the noise is. So if you overexpose, it handles overexposure a little bit better. You can go up about a stop safely, and then in your post-production, just bring those levels down, back down to normal, and it'll crush out any of the noise in the blacks. And the great thing about shooting vlog or log in 4K is presumably when you downscale to 1080p for the internet or whatever, you're actually making some of that noise smaller as well. You're downscaling some of the size of that noise.
Cleans it right up.
Should be, anyways. And we see a bit of that. It's just unfortunate that we're still seeing all that macro blocking and stuff.
Another really cool feature on the GH5 is using the image stabilization in conjunction with a gimbal. It really, you can walk, you can bounce around a little bit. It really smooths out. The image stabilization is a huge, huge improvement over its predecessor in the GH5. And it's, the image stabilization in the 4K video, uncropped 4K video, is a reason for the upgrade alone, I'd say. It's, quite a fantastic camera, deep grip, really comfortable in the hand. Fairly rugged feeling camera.
And can you tell when you picked up that compared to holding the GH4?
This has a little more size. It's a little more substantial in the hand, which I like. It's more ergonomically conducive for the size of my hand. So I think it would be fine for all shooters. I think it's light enough because it's mirrorless, so it's not for people even with arthritis. It's not such a heavy camera. It's not overly heavy. It is mirrorless, but it does feel more substantial than its predecessor for sure.
And I think they probably. There might be a little bit more electronics in here that they've added like this extra. I don't know why. It seems a bit redundant, because to have that there when you can just press the shutter, but sure, why not? The other thing that I think is worth talking about is the photos. So when we think of in terms of like the 5D Mark II, that people are still, yes, it's almost 10 years old, but people are still using it for commercial photography and things like that, is 21 megapixels. This is 20.
It is micro four thirds though, and the Canon 5D Mark II was a full frame sensor camera. So you do have a little bit of a different size, but the image quality and resolution is fantastic in this.
Yeah.
I mean, you can easily print 20 by 24 or up to 30-inch prints with this.
And it was 16 megapixels before with the GH4.
Yeah.
And in my office, actually, I have a bunch of prints that are about this big, and they look great. You know, like it's really incredible how much even 16 megapixels is plenty for most applications. So all told, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we can say about this camera, but it really, I think, is the first camera on the market that is a powerhouse with all the features. You know, it doesn't really lack in any one feature, and I think that's where a lot of the excitement is. It's really capable of higher ISOs now. We're seeing a much cleaner image compared to the GH4, so we did some tests as well, and you can see that a few stops better than the GH4 in terms of light, which is really exciting. Anything that you want to add for this guy?
All around, just a versatile camera. It's it's small enough it can go in a kit, like as a second camera. It can be your primary camera. You know, you can take it around with you city shooting, or you can do full production. It's a very, very versatile camera. Great size, and for the price, the amount of features you get, it's a lot of camera. It's a lot of camera.
All right, that's it for our little fireside chat. Thanks so much for watching. This wasn't supposed to be a super comprehensive video. There's a lot of information on this camera out there, but we wanted to share with you some of the things that we've been seeing the last few months since the camera has been released, and some of our own findings. So we're excited to get this into consumers' hands and seeing what everyone else in the filmmaking community and the photography community can do with it. So thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel. Please give us a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. Until next time, thanks so much.
Nice to meet you.